Hello, everybody. We're going to be talking about building your brand, making meaningful connections in the music industry. That's what this is all about. A couple of pre-session housekeeping tips to be mindful of. First of all, we have team members monitoring live, so feel free to use the chat box. If you have any questions throughout, we will answer any of those questions in the Q&A portion and reach out individually to those with more specific situations or questions as needed. There will be a replay available after, and those resources will be made available live. So if you receive a link in an email and you'd like to rewatch at any time, we'll share those resources and you can download them as needed. My name is Alex Gershwin. I am the gentleman on the right-hand side of the screen. I'm the business development and A&R representative for Songtrust's LA office.
My name is Anna Bond. I'm the Director of Business Development for North America, and I come from a long history in the music industry, so I have a lot of experience with just how to make those connections and get things going.
Hi, my name is Mandy Aubrey. I'm Director of Global Business Development and Client Relations at Songtrust. I've been working here for a couple of years, but I've been in the music industry for over 2 decades, both on the recording and publishing side. Unlike my US colleagues here, I'm based in Europe and I work outside of the Amsterdam office. So today, we hope you're going to have a really informative webinar. We're going to be talking about how you can set yourself apart from others, how you are a brand as a business, or how to build your brand as a business, the importance of networking. We're going to give you some tips on how to make the most of your connections, how to network without much money, doesn't have to cost much, and how to navigate the complex music industry through your connections.
So the first point I think that we want to speak to is the fact that, as a musician, as a songwriter or a touring musician or a producer, anyone who is creating music that is going out into the marketplace, you are a business, right? You're a music creator first. That's your first role. That's the most important role that you play. But in order to do things yourself, especially if you're going to be your own publisher with Songtrust, if you're distributing your own music via a distribution platform, you need to focus on a lot more than writing songs and playing shows or collaborating in the studio. Even if you are going to work with partners like managers, record labels, and traditional publishers, you do need to choose your team carefully. So starting at the very beginning, you do need to think of things in terms of yourself as a business in addition to a creative individual. We have a few points that are kind of key in terms of your relationship to yourself as a business, and we'll kind of speak to each one briefly.
Yeah, I think the most important part is data. Data is on a hot topic on every single music industry conference at the moment. If you get your data wrong, you're really starting off on the wrong foot. So it is a huge subject, but when we talk data, we're talking about song splits, we're talking about ISRCs, that's a unique identification code of a recording, ISWCs, that's more related to copyright and your registrations, and you need to make sure that you stay organized. If you write a song, for example, write it down, put it in your spreadsheet or your notebook, and if you write with other people, sort out who has written which share of the 100% of that composition, ideally before you even leave the studio. And there are some help articles on our website which give you a lot of information about how to organize your data well.
Another piece is distribution, and going on what Mandy said, data is the first piece of that puzzle, right? If you're going to distribute through a platform, one of the many do-it-yourself platforms out there, or even if you are working with a more traditional label organization, they're going to need your song splits, they're going to need all of your PRO affiliation information. But finding the right distribution partner is really key, and you're going to look at that depending on what your genre is, how much contact you're able to have with your distribution rep, where they're able to, place your music, what DSPs are they working with? Are you doing physical distribution? What's their network like there? So there's a lot of different pieces when it comes to making a decision on distribution.
Yes, and piggybacking on what Anna just said about distribution and Mandy about data, publishing also plays a key role. Unfortunately, I think in the independent music creator community around the world, publishing is lost on a lot of people. Literally, the definition, what a publisher is something that's elusive. So, before you have any sort of deal, you are self-publishing your catalog if you create your own material. And with respect to how that plays into data and ultimately to distribution and song splits, you need to have your business buttoned up before you engage, I think, and begin the networking process to figure out who's getting what, be able to properly define what your share of a given track or song is. And that's really fundamental to earning revenue on the back end, especially if your song is distributed onto a big DSP and then royalties start to accumulate, so on and so forth. But then, eventually when you get to a certain point in your career and you start looking at the publishing market, similarly to what was just said earlier, you want to look at what the strengths of those publishers are. You want to look at whether you're maintaining creative control. You want to look at what the term lengths are, what the reputations are of those publishers, whether you even need a traditional publishing deal or you can do something that's a little bit left of center and retain all of your assets and just use an administrator. So as you continue to progress in your career, I think asking yourself those questions and properly defining what the parameters are going to be in your best interest.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think this all kind of coalesces in the idea of, creating your brand, marketing yourself, getting all those pieces in place, and then really kind of going out to the public with what you're doing. And the public is not only potential fans, the public is also your potential network and the rest of the industry, which is what we're talking about today. So what is networking? So what it is professionally interacting with other people in the music industry, and anyone in the music industry is kind of fair game when it comes to networking. You will find that people that you didn't expect to be important contacts will become important contacts later on. So, keep an open mind. Professionally is really a key here. I think that, Mandy and Alex and I have all had the experience of, being bombarded with requests, or, I've had people kind of bring headphones and insist that I listen to their music right there, like at a conference when I'm kind of trying to, have a conversation. So you need to be really careful and not overstep. But again, don't be scared to talk to people who you might have common interests with.
Yeah, that's true. Timing is something that you might not get it right first time. It is something that has to be learned, I think, to a certain extent through experience. If you want to desperately approach someone and you can see that they're deep in conversation with someone else, that may not be the right time. But perhaps if you find the person is on their own and you think it could be a good time, I always find that it's a good way to start to say something like, may I have a quick word with you? Or is it a good time to speak about something? They may well, it is a question where you may well get the door slammed in your face, but I think that is better than trying to do whatever it is that you wish to accomplish to someone who's not ready. So if they say something like, oh, this isn't a very good time, I have a meeting in a few minutes, then you can politely say, well, how about if I come and find you in 10 minutes or something, or when would suit you to time. So, I think that's very important. And also remember that, that you're important too. I think to be too subservient is also a little bit off-putting, even if it's your hero or heroine, So I think we're all equal, and you may well be the next Metallica or whomever in the future. And people in the business, for example, I think we look at younger talent or less experienced talent in that way. So, be proud of who you are and what you do, even if you are nervous. That's my advice anyway.
Yeah, and in addition to that, there's this idea of reciprocity that's very important as well. You're not just going, or shouldn't be going, to an event or some other meeting with the intention of just asking for things and not being able to offer anything in return, or ultimately being able to help out those that you're seeking out for X or Y reasons. You have to remember that you bring value too, but it's also being mindful of who your audience is or who you're trying to attract in those types of situations. And I think positioning yourself as somebody that can ultimately help that person, maybe it's accomplish a goal, maybe it's being a resource down the road. You know, you don't want to be standoffish and seem like somebody that is ultimately just there to ask for favors and not be able to offer much in return, or to sort of drop off the face of the earth when, you know, called upon to actually help down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And kind of to what Mandy said, you might think at this early stage in my career, what do I have to offer? But like Mandy said, like people in the music industry generally do it because we care about helping people develop their careers. And even if the only thing you offer is like, you know, the chance to kind of get involved with a new artist, or the chance to have a conversation that the person might find illuminating, you know, that's something as well. And just remember, you know, as time goes on, that you'll get more and more opportunities to help out other people as well. So why is networking important, right? That's what we're talking about today. You're creating a community for yourself, and it might be slow going at first, but setting up this community, you know, starting on a very grassroots level, will help you as time goes on, whether it's, you know, meeting someone who eventually will want to, you know, take your band on tour, or find out where the new recording studio in town is opening, or, you know, it could be anything. And that's really why you need to be proactive about creating your network. Like, I used to work for a label who were based here in New York, but we had a demo from an artist who were from a town outside of Glasgow, Scotland. They ended up getting signed to the label, but they had, because they were in kind of this smaller community, they had really interconnected themselves with the Glasgow music scene, which is, you know, historically there's been a lot going on. And it was, there were a couple of other artists who came from that scene who we also ended up signing, because they said, you know, I just played a show with these guys, I just met them in the studio, you should check them out. So two other artists who were in the network of this initial band ended up getting signed. They ended up touring together, recording songs together, and eventually, I mean, they're all still really close to each other today. But because they were able to build that community, because they were open to, you know, having these experiences, going to each other's shows, supporting each other, you know, playing guitar on whoever's record when they needed an extra guitarist, you know, they were all able to kind of develop their careers together. And that was something that wouldn't have happened if this first band who had gotten signed hadn't had that close community network within their city.
Yeah, I think networking is really important, and you don't want to wait to begin your network when you are most desperately in need of your network. A network takes quite a long time to build up, but then it works even when you're not working, when you've started it well. You know, the 6 degrees of separation comes to mind, and it really is like that in the music industry. And, you know, it's very important that you don't just, you know, try to make everyone your friend on Facebook, or everyone your Instagram follower, or on LinkedIn or whatever. Try to find a reason why you wish to engage with whomever it is you're trying to build for your network. It comes across much better. And it really makes a better first impression. There are some people, you know, obviously in our business, we come in contact with a lot of creators, and there are a few who really stand apart from the others, because in particular, whilst they are first and foremost great musicians and writers, they have had a very professional approach, and they speak in a way that shows that they've been informed, and that they've done their research, and they've looked into it. It could be as simple as just saying, not being overly familiar in the first outreach. That doesn't really go down too well often, but you know, so please don't start with hey, even if it doesn't work with people in the industry that well, I think. But if you just say, you know, a hi is okay. If you say hi Mandy, for example, I see that you're going to be at such and such a place. I'm also going to be at such and such a place. I'm looking forward to you know, hearing you speak, and maybe we can chat afterwards. Then you have something to say. if you do indeed go to that place, and then you do go to that particular panel or whatever it is, and then just say, hi, it's me. Do you remember I wrote to you and said I'd be here? Then you've got something to build upon.
So we know why networking is important, and we know what networking is, but who should be in your network as an individual creator? You're a songwriter, you're a producer, you're a musician. Who do you want to get in touch with on a local level in order to build your network and your community? So as I kind of mentioned before, right, anyone who works even peripherally in the music world can be a good contact for you. And especially when you're just starting out, it's a really good idea to start locally. If you look at most of the kind of big success stories of artists who have come up in the past forever, really basically, you will see that they all developed in their local scene far before they got any national attention. And this is especially true of, musicians who are touring. If you're a live musician, you really need to start building your live audience on a local level. The people that you might find in your community include other musicians, right? And so this can not only be opportunities to develop friendships and trade recording tips or trade, guitar recommendations or help fix each other's amps, but these can be collaborators. These could be, again, potential future tour mates, even potential future bandmates. If you're a songwriter, you could potentially co-write songs. You could be meeting musicians who will need you in the studio if you're a producer. It's really about potentially finding new collaborators and other creators that you can work with and then eventually create something that's kind of bigger than the sum of its parts. Other types of professionals locally, recording studios, of course, the managers of those studios, the engineers at those studios. These are people who are not only going to be great when you need to record music, but they also are going to have connections with other aspects, right? We're talking about people at venues. A lot of the time, the sound person at the venue also has a recording studio. So if that's a relationship that, if you're good to the sound person at soundcheck, she might say, well, I have, reduced rates at my studio overnight. If you ever want to, lay down a track, that's the kind of thing that you can kind of work with. Again, collaborating writers, local press are often accessible depending on what your community is. You might meet them in an event. You might be able to meet them just by sending an email. Local businesses, local artist managers, tour managers, like these people are all in your local community, and it's just about finding them, and they all overlap. Your local radio person might be your local press person. Your local radio person might work at the record store. Like there are all these, especially in smaller communities, you're going to find a lot of people with interconnected responsibilities. And once you meet one of these people and you talk to them and you find out you have an affinity and you're able to communicate, they might be able to introduce you to other people or help you out in multiple ways.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if you grow your network in a reasonable, sensible way at a reasonable speed, so you start to know who your network is, then it becomes easier to extend it. So pretend you needed someone who, let's say you have someone French on your network, and someone who you come into contact with next is saying, oh, I'm working on something, I need a French translation. Then you can say, oh, I know someone who could do that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's sort of how it works. You have to look deeply. And sometimes it may not be initially apparent how someone in the network could in the future help. But it's also really important to think beyond you, if you're a creator, or beyond your service, if you're a business or like a label or a publisher. It's great. It's great to be able to help people, not just for personal gain, because it helps them to remember that you did something nice, helpful, kind, selfless. All these things are attributes that I believe that people will remember you for. So, I often get people who, we don't offer creative services at Songtrust, but many people in my network do, and the ones who I've grown closer to over the years, or I've had experience with in other jobs, are the ones that maybe I'll recommend to other people to sometimes contact or distributors, or if someone's looking for a distributor in China, I say, well, this person deals with that. So that's sort of how it works. It is complex. The network is a bit of a spider's web, but you shouldn't look at it as just getting as many people in your network as possible. It's about quality and be above quantity, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that the point of being open to how you can help people is the really good one. And like Mandy said, as you grow your network, you're going to have more potential resources out there that you can offer. We all do it, and I think it comes naturally to people in the music industry. It's like, I hear a band, they're not right for my label, but I know my friend who has another label loves this sort of music, so I send them over. It just kind of is part of the flow. Your network and what you're looking for is really going to depend on what stage of your career you're in. You might not be in a stage of record labels yet. If you don't have an audience locally at all, you're not in the stage where you're looking to pitch your music for sync. Like, remember like where you are, and don't be afraid to reach out to someone who might seem like a stretch, but really focus on the people who are around you. Focus on musicians who are at similar stages, maybe who are headlining a show that you're opening, so that you're able to grow your network, but without going beyond what's reasonable for where you are in your career.
Yeah, and it's also important to ask yourself and be honest with yourself about what stage your network is at. And getting creative is key. Fortunately, we live in an age now when you don't need to spend a fortune on a marketing budget or a promotional push in order to get discovered by a lot of people all over the country and all over the world. So, understanding your audience and where your audience is consuming your music, where they're looking for things, how to attract that audience is only going to, advance your career. And there are any number of ways you can do that. So some things that, we were talking about internally is meetups and Facebook events as an example. There are tons of meetups that are going on all over the place. So, especially maybe your local music scene gravitates towards a certain area of town, and maybe a given bar or a performance venue is well known for having certain types of meetups that are geared towards industry professionals that are maybe creator centric, etc., where you can meet with people and really go through with a fine-tooth comb to see that that actually may require your participation and presence, whereas some may not be exactly what you're looking for. It really depends on who's maybe on the RSVP list, and maybe that the people that have RSVP'd are people that you don't think deserve that amount of time at that given moment, and maybe you're trying to focus on other facets of your career to propel you to the next stage, as an example. It could be other things, but there are also local creator groups that are similar to meetups where you can collaborate with, maybe meet local creators and see where they're spending their time. Maybe there are weekly writing sessions or happy hours or community centers that offer practice space that you can utilize. So that would get you face time with future collaborators, at least potentially. Also, mind you that it doesn't take much to make sure that your contact information is up to date on an EPK or maybe just your social media presence. You want to make sure that, especially if you feel strongly or feel that your music stands out and think that it could be used in maybe a creative context for sync placements, or people are hitting you up on maybe your DMs on Instagram, but they're not hitting you up on Facebook, and you want to make yourself readily available to those people. You want to make sure that you can be searchable, that people can find you. So you definitely want to make sure that your contact information is up to date, that that it can be easily shared with anybody that might be interested in contacting you, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Understanding your community and researching your local community and the fan base you want to build is really important. And it might take time to know exactly what it is you want to achieve, who your fan base should be or who your community is best. It might be you have to go a bit further and it might not be on your doorstep. And then you have to evaluate, costs in going to events in different areas from where you live and so forth. But give it time, don't be too impatient, and be prepared to make a few mistakes along the way. I think we still do sometimes, go to places and we think, oh, I'm not sure if that was worthwhile, but I think a bad experience is a good experience if you learn from it. So, just go places, and also you'll evolve. So it could be that somewhere that you end up going for 2, 3, 4 years suddenly doesn't seem right anymore. So along the way, you may need to make some slight changes in the route that you're taking to building your community.
Yeah, and I think when we were talking about building community and we're talking about building a network, we talked about kind of looking at things as a quid pro quo, like you're not just asking for favors, you're helping. The idea of trade, right? We're not talking about giving away your time for free, but there's a lot of things you can do, especially as you're starting out. You can help a studio manager with the session, and maybe in return you can use the space in the off hours for your own recording, help an artist pack up their mail orders, and maybe they'll give you some guitar lessons or even just advice, DJ a show, and maybe you get a ticket to the main event for free. There's so many things you can do that are good for building relationships and building your community, and you're saying, I have interest and I have time and I'd like to help. A lot of other ways that you can stand out. Again, you want your contact information out there. You want to make sure that you're creating engaging content that might be interesting to your community, not just potential fans. Give your backstory, talk about the local institutions that helped you out. If it's the record store, if it's your local venue, play local events. That's crucial. You've got to build a local audience. Do creative things with other artists, like curating playlists together and sharing them to both of your social media. That's going to help create awareness in both of your networks because you're building something together. And again, social media is a huge tool that we have now that folks 20 years ago didn't have. Make sure, again, contact information, engaging content, but try to use it creatively. See how you can build your network there, and maybe you'll end up networking with folks who are outside of your local community as well. Another way to network with people who are outside of your local space is by going to events.
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of events. I mean, one of the events that obviously I go to the most is conferences. It's a great way to meet a lot of people in a short period of time. And if you research the conferences and find out whether it's the one for you, just very briefly, there are different sorts of conferences in the music industry. There are some that are geared to more entry level, people trying to understand the business. There are ones which get into the heart of deep and difficult topics. Then there are some which have a combination of the conference element with panels, as well as a great live aspect or festival, as it tends to be called, within it. Networking up front of these conferences is the best way to make the most of them. Really go through the schedule, the panels, make extra notes if it helps, look at the people who'll be attending, think about who you may want to meet with, think about the possibility of connecting with them, be it through LinkedIn or another social media platform. One thing that's really impressive is if you have someone who you particularly want to speak to, and they're on a panel, for example, what you could do is connect with them to begin with, if you can, at least say that you're going to be there, but have their Instagram or their Twitter name ready, and during the panel you can instantly tweet and say, I'm watching so and so doing such and such at this moment, and it's a very invigorating chat, and then also tag all the other people in it. I've had someone do that throughout a whole festival, and it's very nice for the professionals who are on that panel. They will notice. I think everyone looks at what happened at that. We don't have loads of time, but I think those are the main points that I wanted to cover on conferences.
And also be careful about researching and being mindful of who's going to be there, so you can capitalize on attending that event. So do your research. Figure out sort of who the players are and how you can be of value to those that are going to be on those panels and essentially hosting the event. Because you don't want to go there and fire blindly. You want to go there with a purpose, but be but also be conscientious of how you're approaching those individuals. Okay, so who is Songtrust, right? What's our role within the business, and how can we help? So Songtrust is a publishing administration platform, and what we do is we help get music creators paid. Basically, if you are a publisher or you're an entity that owns or controls a composition and you're looking to cover your bases and you have music that's been distributed around the world, you have the right to collect that money that's owed to you. And there is not that many options at one's disposal to cover your bases on a global scale while maintaining complete ownership of one's rights. So when you use Songtrust, you're using a tech-focused platform to handpick the tracks that you'd like us to administer, and we do it at the largest scale in the business. Right now, we are administering the works for over 205,000 songwriters, which equates to 26,000 plus publishers and over 2 million copyrights around the world. That makes us the largest by volume publishing admin that's in the market. And what's also noteworthy is that our terms are the fairest you're likely to find in the business. So, if you're looking for a short-term commitment and you want to dip your toe into the water and sort of see what's there without jumping in all the way, and really want to get a sense of your true publishing value before you enter into a traditional deal, Songtrust is an ideal fit.